Welcome to Fun.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's Force Friday. Today we're going to talk about seeing anatomy. We've been talking about seeing in general for the last 4 weeks. This is our fourth week, and just how important seeing is, right? Obviously, drawing is not just seeing; it's seeing and thinking and moving your hands, right? For me, it's that eyeball, brain, hand equation. But you know, I have seeing up there right up front, right? If you can't see, then you're going to have a much harder time drawing. And as I said before, I have met artists who did not learn from observation; they learned from imagination. I happen to have learned from observation, so I'm teaching you that path. Yeah, so I think seeing and understanding what you're looking at is what ends up leading to perspective and force and shape and anatomy and all the stuff that we've been talking about. So that's what we're going to do today. So before we get started, as always, let's say hello to the gang. How's it going, Mrityunjay?
Going good. Anatomy, super excited as always.
Yeah.
Anatomy is tough.
Anatomy is fun. Yeah, I think if there's one idea I guess I would want to put out here to blanket today is I get the attraction of drawing anatomy, and I want to recommend, suggest to all of you that anatomy is not the beginning. Anatomy is the end. There's lots of other things that as you have all seen over the last few weeks that we've covered that are leading us to anatomy, right? Very, very often we get, artists that come over to drawingforce.com and they come in with anatomy work that has no force, has no form, and poor shape. And it's like, hey, why are you here? Why are you drawing anatomy? My joke to this, if anything, is like, we're not here to be doctors, right? We're here to be artists. So you need to learn how to draw in order to draw anatomy, right? Not learn how to draw while learning to draw anatomy. Much more challenging. Yeah, way more difficult. Believe me, it's all challenging enough as it is. You don't want to make it harder on yourself. So save the anatomy, okay? Save it. It's the detail and the icing on the cake. And it could be amazing and incredibly, help you with efficiency in drawing form and force and everything else and shape. So how are you doing, Swenley?
Yeah, great. And it's funny that you mentioned that because, I had some new students ask me that as well, as if they had to learn anatomy before learning how to draw with force. And it's like, if you take a medical doctor, they have more anatomy knowledge than all three of us combined. And that doesn't mean they can draw, so it's important, but it's at the bottom of the list. It's not as important as beginner artists think it is.
Yeah. I remember when I was teaching in New York, there were some hardcore students in some of the other teachers' classes. And I remember bumping into one of them at the Metropolitan Museum of Art one day. And I was walking around drawing and he was walking around drawing. We bumped into each other. And, he knew who I was and I knew of him. I think he sat in on my class. I had him in a few times too. And he was super maniacal about the anatomy, but his drawings had barely any life. He was more of a copyist and a studyist, and he's like labeling things. And I don't know, that day kind of sticks out in my head. That was like my day, my lesson of like, look, this other stuff is so much more important. He had these, like, you go to the Met and there's these beautiful, poetic sort of Renaissance era sculptures with all this like motion in them and vitality. And then here's his dead little, copied drawing. And I was like, wow, that is definitely not what I want to do. I could still learn the anatomy, right? But the goal here is to mimic the exuberance, right, that these sculptures had, that the artist who had sculpted it had obviously put a ton of work into to get to that place. It's not to say anatomy is not important. I think Swanley, Mrityunjay, and I would all say anatomy is important, but it's not the first thing. That's for later. So, okay, so let's see. Let's head back over to Photoshop, get this ball rolling here. So seeing anatomy. Some of you may know this, some of you may not. There is a force anatomy book. I think I put it in the description, a link for the book to my publisher who is selling it. It's also available on Amazon. And I'm pretty proud of that book. I have to say, if you've been with me on prior videos, it was definitely the most difficult of the books to write because it's so dense. And it's the first time I like color coded the pages because of the density of the book to try to make it easier for you guys, And then I started moving that forward, right? We're taking that color coding now to animal drawing, and believe me, that'll be in future force books as well. So seeing anatomy, right? I want to be able to see it. So before we can see it, let's just do a little revisit from where we left off last week, right? Let's go over to my force pencil here. So we know that we don't want, we don't want this, right? We don't want this, and we don't want this, right? So these are our three don'ts, right? We want to stay away from these guys. What we want is an abstraction of something more like this. And this is pretty malleable, okay? And if you want to know more about that, definitely check out the videos on force shape, because they are out there on the website and on YouTube. So we're looking for this, and it's really easy when you get into anatomy to fall into one of the traps. This one, how often I see this on the neck, right? Like just all the time, like somebody will draw a head and they'll draw the neck like this, right? Just like double concave it. So you want to be aware of that trap. The neck is actually not pushing in like that. And if anything, you might get double convex out of it because of the sternocleidomastoid muscles, right? So things are pushing out, not digging in. And that happens a lot with anatomy. As we go into these finer details, there's certain areas of the body or in poses where a student artist will think that they're seeing a concave moment, when sometimes it's like a curve against a straight and maybe another curve, and what they see is this, right? So you want to really be careful of those moments. Sometimes they're not as simple as you think they are, and you have to see those separations in order to really convey the right forces and forms, right? So we want this guy, right? We want this here. And remember, as I said last time, with shape, we're using line, but we're using line to develop shapes. So that's important. That's important to what the three of us will be teaching you guys today. Is we're drawing with lines, but we're drawing the shapes of the anatomy. And the shape will present the form, such as the pectoralis sitting on top of the rib cage, right? Okay. So that kind of leads me to, in animation, there's squash and stretch, right? Let's put a ground plane here just to help my own brain, right? So it's kind of pushing up on top, a little flatter on the bottom, squashed, and then it stretches. So this comes from animation, and I try and use this in the anatomy, but you'll notice that there's a problem with this, with these two shapes. They're both symmetrical. This one's not as bad because I'm kind of straightening out the bottom and pushing a lot on the top. So I am getting to almost a straight to curve shape. This one's definitely symmetrical. Like there's nowhere for me to go to really like fix this. So I have to be careful of that. But the reason I bring this up is I want you to think about the malleability of anatomy. Some areas, of course, are harder and some are softer. The body is made of a pattern of hard and soft because of joints and skeletal, the skeleton and bones, relative to long stretches of soft muscle, right? But like I said, we want to keep in mind the malleability, not that we're trying to create a stone anatomical drawing of the figure, right? We want to think about the squash and stretch. Now, muscles in general, muscles in general will have, muscles kind of look like this, right? Like it's like this, and there's tendons at the end, right? So the endings of muscles are called tendons. And it's very easy to draw the muscles and just make them parallel as well. And our job, again, is we want to try to stay away from that. Even this, I already started to change. You'll notice the curve here is a little longer, and this one is a little short, straight, and then a curve. So this becomes the force curve. So again, even in something like a long stretched muscle, just be aware of trying not to get mirrored, right, parallel from one side to the next, right, within the shape itself. So I'll usually try to push the curve into one side and kind of try to straighten out the other side to give me stretch, right, the squash and stretch, to give me the stretch side of things, but not fall into the trap of basically just doing this, right, and then have a tendon at either end, right, you see? So that's what we don't want. So be aware of that. Now, I couldn't find this, unfortunately, in time for today's session. My house is kind of in shambles right now and boxes all over the place, but I have, and I might have, I don't know if I showed this when we did sketchbooks or not, probably about a year ago. I had a drawing, I have some of my high school drawings in this book. And the one area that I found I had a common problem with when I look back at my work is to take figures, male figures specifically, and I would draw muscles like this. Right, it'd be something like that. These are the muscly dudes, right? Get the knee in there, and you have a calf, right? So it'd be something like that.
Those are some strong arms and legs.
Hell yeah, man. Arnold has nothing on me and my guys. Right, so it'd be like that, right? That was pretty common. In fact, the one that I remember is a guy dressed in armor with like a chainmail shirt with the sleeves cut off, right? And then these like giant muscular arms poking out. And again, this is something that all three of us see very often from students, is this falling into this trap, right? To fall into this trap. So we don't want this trap, right? What we want to do is try to obtain really good shape design, right? So Mrityunjay is actually going to take care of this one today. I'm going to show you on legs that the same thing occurs, right? You saw it right there, actually. I'll do a close-up though. Let's say this is the pelvis. What I'll see students do is they'll draw the leg like this, right? And then draw the foot, right? So the problem with this is fully symmetrical, right? It's curving on both sides. There's no asymmetry, and therefore the shape that I can extrapolate from this is this, right? Now I'm going to tone it in to make it a little easier to see, right? So like so, you see? That's what we don't want. So what do we want? Right, well, we want to get straight to curve shape design in here, right? So the abstraction of this, notice I'm saying the abstraction of this, because we're going to get more and more real, more and more organic, right? But the abstraction of this would be to say, okay, well, here's the pelvis. I want a curve and a straight, right? Remember our shape. I want a curve and a straight. And here I want a curve and a straight. And then here I want a curve and a straight. So I have three of them. 1, 2, 3, you see? Now, that's pretty good. It gets us pretty far, I have to say. And it gets us past having a trapped leg. But it's not necessarily super organic or real, okay? So let's make it a little more realistic, right? So first of all, along the expanse of this outside thigh, I can pick where I want the apex. So I look for that in models. Some models who are more muscular will have an apex that's a little lower in the leg. It makes their thigh very thick, right? So it might be like to here and then cut in, right? So it might be something like that. On this side, this is typically not straight. Even though abstractly speaking, it is our straight, it's typically two curves. It's actually more like this. And the reason is this curve that starts here and cuts into the thigh is the Sartorius muscle, which actually goes all the way up to the iliac crest of the hip over here, like so. So you'll end up, I'm going to erase that line now, the Sartorius line. But I want you to be aware that line goes all the way up there, and it gets us to down here, right? So now, you know, we have an overlapping moment. It puts the musculature of the quads over here versus the muscles back here in this corner. And I have a more realistic shape, a more organic shape, and yet it was built off a straight to curve. So what really happened? And abstractly, right, abstractly speaking, I have a line that's like this with a high, well, a low, I should say, a low apex. And then instead of straight, I've got a curve and I have another curve, right? So something like this. And this curve bleeds right into the straight for the knee. You follow, right? So that's what we're looking for. That's the top half and the knee included. On the second half, on the lower half, this bottom is actually, for me, the edge of the tibia. And then the calf muscle or gastrocnemius comes out from behind the knee and connects down back behind here. And that kind of finishes off then the full, more organic shape of the lower leg, you see. So that's the trick, right? This works in front view and back view. The leg could be bending, right? So that could give me form out of this as well, right? So let's do that real quick. Let's say here's my the hip again. So here I had the knee. I'm going to move the knee. I'll cut it in half, right, and say it's here now, right? Here's like the line I'm going to put it on, right? And now it's going to come out like this. I'm going to use that Sartorius to really give me form, right? Here's the second curve. That's that inside curve that we see right there, right? So this is round, right? This is all round, 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 right? Sartorius is cutting in here, grabbing that roundness, right? And now we can really see this very strong overlap that's occurred because of that, because of the shapes, right? Because of the anatomy, how they're connected to bone. And here I'm coming in with the knee. Let's put the ankle half the distance back as well, right? So here, I'm going to take my shape on that outside. I'm going to put it high curve apex. Here's the my straight, which I'm going to ever so slightly bend in. Not enough to interfere with the curve of force on the outside there. And then I'm going to put my gastrocnemius back there and attach it right to the bone. And then that'll lead me into, you know, to the ankles and so on, right? But you can see we've got a sense of depth. I have really barely any surface line on the interior. It's all shapes, it's all overlaps. It's giving us perspective. It has anatomy and it has good shape design, right? So everything's there. So that's how I'm stepping through that process, right? Any questions so far? Yes, redacted. The tibia does have a slight curve to it. Some people it's very strong, others it's weaker. Let's see, can we do a photojournal? What's the, or a journal? Tire mascot. Oh, the Toyona was asking about the Michelin Man, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's the leg, right? I'm hoping pretty quickly here, I'm showing you, here's how, you know, here's number one, right? And here's number two, our before and our after, right? And we have, you know, 2+ over here, which is version number 2 with perspective put into it as well, right? So now what I want to do, I wanted to share with you a diagram right out of the force book. So you can see the force book talks about the same stuff. This is the specificity of the knee, right? You can see outside thigh, inside knee, outside calf. You can see now some of the anatomy around the knee with the patella. You can see the tendons, you can see the ligaments, you know, you can see more of the structure of the knee. Be aware that what you have going on there is the femur. Here, it's like this. It's the femur is like this and the tibia is like this, right? And these two basically meet like this, right? So when you bend your leg, right, this is the inside, you know, this is the bottom here, right? So it pushes out like this. And my ring, let's say, is like the patella, right? It's on this surface. So you have something that's doing like this. That's how you always have these like 4 bumps. You'll see a bump here and here and a bump here and here on the knee. And when it does this, you still have 4 bumps, right? Because this is just now the other side. It's the bottom side of that knee, but you have this kind of thing going on. So be aware of that. You can kind of see that here in the drawing. Let's head back to Photoshop. Right, so you can see that right here, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's like bump 1, bump 2, bump 3, bump 4, right? And then you can see the fibula is this little bump over here hanging out onto the side of the tibia, okay? So last but not least, because this series has been about seeing, I grabbed some photographs of a model that I worked with. I believe his name was David in the Bay Area. He's a very, very good model. You may have seen him in some of my other videos. So let's take a look, right? It's like, let's really look at what's going on, right? So when I look here, I don't know, it's like, if I start thinking in terms of shape, I'm like, wait a minute. I can see that this actually does have a little bit more of a curve to it than inside does. Pretty straight, right? Notice that. I may not have noticed that without knowing the rules, right? It's like, I'm supposed to put my mind into the mindset of seeing shape and silhouette, and there it is, right? So if I pull out, I would say here that here's David's waist. Let's darken this up a little bit. There's his hip. So this leg, abstractly, right? Like quick abstraction here, I would say it's like this, right? This is lower. There we go. Right, it's like that. So there's my shape. I could very easily have fallen into numerous traps with this, but that's the shape that I want, right? Now, if I want to look harder, I know that separation can be in here. So I could say, what do I want it in there? I can kind of see it in the highlight a little bit on the pants. But if I wanted to, I could pull in here just a little bit because I know that this is going to make its way up to the iliac crest, right? So if I wanted to, I could push a little bit of an overlapping moment in here like so, but relatively straight. Again, he has somewhat muscular legs. Remember, as I said before, you can see the apex is lower because of that, right? Now, if we continue on here, we get over here, he's pushing this leg back in space, right? So from here, it starts moving down, right? We have this side of the knee. So force is going here into the side of the knee. It's coming off that Sartorius. And you can see his calf muscle has a high apex, kind of like the one I drew out of my head, right? And then it's sweeping down this way. And then we can take the shin, the tibia, and say, well, the shape of it is something like this. And then the gastrocnemius, as I was saying before, is like this, and then kind of comes back in and fleshes the rest of this out, you see? So something like that. And there you go, right? So we've got forceful shape again. I could have easily have taken this drawing and done this and said, well, here's his leg, here's his leg, here's his knee, here's his calf, here's his calf, right? The end. You can see the massive difference that occurs between the clarity that shape brings, right? With direction, especially with that curve of force against that straight, and just not getting into the typical traps that happen on the leg, right? Let's see, how am I doing on time? Doing pretty well. Let's take a look at this other image. Here's one that I think I see pretty often. Let's take a look at the close leg, all right? So here's the leg. What would I normally see here? I would normally see a student do this, right? They would grab here's the waist, here's his rear end, right? His leg is here. It'd be very easy. Again, trap here is to do this, right? Make it perfectly mirrored of itself, which once more gives us, a symmetrical shape, right? Traps us. It's almost like a turkey leg, right? Something like that, which we don't want, right? So I'm like, okay, I have to figure my way around this as best I can. So in general, what'll happen here is we'll have, first of all, hopefully we get some asymmetry out of it. So I always try to look at what the apex of the curve is on the top versus the bottom, right? In this case, it looks like the apex is a little further back on the bottom and a little further, down or to the left on the top, right? And then normally what would happen here is we would have, so we have this apex compared to the other one, and then you'll usually end up with a longer straight on the bottom for the tendons to hook up to the tibia, and have a smaller straight on the top and a longer curve, right? So here's the curve of force of the thigh and the shorter, right? And then cut in like this. So sometimes this will go even further out where it really shortens this and it lengthens this. And the asymmetry helps here too. So man, this one's like so dangerously close. You could see it could be very easy to slip into that trap of the symmetry. But what I'm looking for in general in the legs is I'm looking for a longer curve on top with a small straight for the knee, with a shorter curve on the bottom with a longer straight for the tendons, like so. So shorter hamstring area, right? And this is very crude and abstract, but that's what I'm looking for, right? That's typically the answer for the upper leg, right? So I hope that makes sense. I went very quickly over legs today. Just watch for the symmetry. Oh, thank you, Valerie. How's it going? Thank you very much for the contribution. You know, be aware of the asymmetry. Again, very easy to fall in the trap. Things will stay more fluid by doing this versus me getting stuck in the leg, right? If I do this, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get basically trapped down here. It's like a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like a funnel with a stopper on it, right? Like I can't get through here. Now, when we come through here, we can sweep up into the leg, come down past the knee, which is then going to direct us into the calf, right? So I kind of go around this. This is almost like window dressing, you know, where flow is here. If I come in straight, I just want to go straight down and I lose the sense of rhythm, right? Any questions from the audience? Peter and Marla, what reference pack? This is not from any of the reference packs. This is from the Mike Matesi reference pack. So I will try to get that out there actually for you guys. Thank you, Redacted Computer. Now we know you like pizza and ice cream. We have a fellow dairy fanatic. Thank you again. Yeah, these aren't in any pack, as Wenley said, but I can try and put them in them. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it. I can't remember. I have to see what my deal is with David. These pictures were taken a long time ago. Any other questions besides the photographs? Let's see. If you really think about it, Mike, lemon, orange wedges can be used to design the shapes of body. Yes, most definitely. I use, that's one of the many, many metaphors I've used over 30 years is a half pizza, right? It's a lemon slice, the letter D, right? These are all things that look like this, right? Anything that you can think of that looks like this is good, right? This is the abstraction of it. So it's been a lemon slice before, it's been a, you know, a half pie, but we're looking for this letter D shape, right? And the thing is, remember, it doesn't always have to be a perfect straight. The letter D can also be something like this. In fact, the letter D also sometimes is just something like this. It's almost like a curved triangle, you see? That's where really, I think for me, it lives most of the time is that curved triangle with that straight to curve is how I draw a majority of the body, and I know how to plug in the anatomy and draw the anatomy on top of that, right? Now, before I leave, just to close off on the legs, here's all the tricks to, you know, to getting the silhouette, but anatomy itself, I didn't even get into the leg anatomy. We talked only about the Sartorius, so let me close off with that. You know, in the leg, we also have all these muscles, right? So we talked about the Sartorius, which is a very thin band of a muscle. And if I can, it's long and skinny, right? So very, very difficult to get a good shape out of it. So I'm going to try to have it pinch a little bit here, get wider, and probably pinch down again towards the end, right? Almost like the blade of grass I showed last week, right? Imagine a blade of grass for that muscle. When it comes to the quads, what's happening here is we end up with this shape. You'll notice here, I kind of have this like teardrop shape now that's occurring, right? So we can almost tone that in as like a new shape. This is what I'm getting at with the hierarchy. It's a new shape within the silhouetted shape. And then that shape gets broken down into smaller shapes, right? So here I want to draw a quadricep. I'm going to have this curve over here and more of a straight over here, right? And that shape, right? This shape now ended up in my teardrop shape. And then I have another quadricep, right? That's like here, right? And another quadricep that's here, you see? So these shapes are shapes piled within shapes, piled within shapes, piled within shapes. So you've got this whole almost like Russian wooden doll thing, right, happening with like one thing inside of another, inside of another, inside of another, to finally put the entire figure together with anatomy, right? So that's why, going back to the beginning, that's why we wait on anatomy till much later, because look at how much you need to know prior, right? You need to really know how to draw, first of all. Before we get to anatomy, you should have a good understanding of your drawing ability. And in that ability that we're teaching, we're talking about force, form, and shape, because now we could talk about the anatomy with those appropriate skills, right? Whoops. All right, so with that, let me empower Mrityunjay with the sort of co-hosting. Here we go. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Mrityunjay.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Screen share. There we go. I got the power finally. All right.
The recharge.
Yep, recharge. So Okay, so I'm going to be covering arms, right? Uh, Arms are easy, easy to understand. Just like there are some simple rhythms in it. But again, the people actually fall into the balloon shape anatomy again into that. So let's discuss step by step. Okay, so first we're gonna go through the rhythms of the arm, and then how to put like good shapes in it, and then gonna go over some anatomy. Okay, and finally like some demos within it. Okay, so all right, so here I have a okay, here I have a photograph. There we go. So look here, what's happening. It's just that, right? If I just say, okay, just do like represent this arm in one simple rhythm, this is what actually happening with it. Okay, it's just like that. So the thing to remember when you're drawing arms is you always want to keep the force at the elbow side, okay? And you can also say tricep side because they're both at the back, right? The perfect back of the arm. So you always want to keep the force at the back of the arm, okay? So the mistake that most people do is they come from deltoid like that, and they cross it from the bicep side, okay, and then they just go to the back of the arm, right? This is wrong, right? Bicep, just keeping force on the bicep is wrong thing, okay? Just you want to just go like that, okay? So you're coming from deltoid and you just want to cross from the back of the arm, like that. So force is never on the bicep side, remember? Okay, it's always at the back of the arm. Remember that. So now the second thing that you want to keep in mind is like where that force is coming from. Swanley's gonna touch more on that because he's covering the, sorry for that. Yeah, Swanley's gonna touch that scapula thing and the shoulder thing, right? So he'll just tell you more like where the force is coming from, but it's always like from the back, okay? So here's a little heads up, right? So you want to remember that, okay, so this is a very cool trick, okay? So imagine like this is the bag, like back of someone right there. Uh, and there goes the neck like that. So this rhythm from the spine, okay, you can say also that this force is actually like dividing into three, just like a flower or something, So dividing into like three forces. One is going into the neck, obviously, right there. So we can say it's going through the sternocleidomastoid, like there. And the other two, they're going into both shoulders, okay? So one is going here, one is going there, right? So now what happens with this force, as it's coming through the shoulder and it crosses over to the arm, like that. This is a profile shot, right? So let's do another one, right? This is from a profile shot of someone. And see, like this force is coming from the back, going into the deltoid and passing through the arm like this, okay? So these are, so first of all, figure out the connections, right? Where the force is coming from. You always don't want to just figure out that, okay, this is the force. Okay. You also want to figure out like where it's coming from. That's actually going to help you like connect things more. And this is the mistake that people do. A lot of mentees actually does that. And in fact, I've just, yesterday, I think I was discussing with a mentee, like, okay, you just, what you're doing is just focusing on that single force, but force is about connectivity, okay? So remember like where it's coming from. So that's a simple trick, for your fluidity and connectivity, and also remember like where the force of the arm is coming from, right there. So with this reference, what you can just do is this, okay? It's like this. You cannot see the other shoulder here very well, but thing is, the force is coming from the deltoid. And look here. Now, how are you gonna decide like where the force is? Is it gonna be this side or this side, basically, right? So you're gonna say, you just have to look like where the bicep is like falling to, like on the right side or the left side. Sometimes it happens that it falls right in the middle, and you're gonna be confused. Oh, like where the rhythm is, right? But here it's pretty much clear. It's like here, okay? The like how did I decide that? Look here. This is the bicep right there, okay? Right there is the biceps, and here you can see the side of the tricep, right? Here you can see the tricep. So this portion here, all of this is the tricep side, okay? So you want to come from here. Now, some people do this mistake as well. They come from here, but they kind of stop and they say, oh, look at this bump here. Okay. This is also a trap. What I usually used to call it like brachoradialis trap. Okay. So yeah, some people just like switch over to the other side and say, okay, here's a rhythm, right? But that's actually not. So again, we're gonna discussing more on that in a couple seconds. Like why that's not actually not a force. Hey, just go away. My cat. Sorry for that. All
Force
right.
cat. It's our mascot.
So she's
Force
playing,
kitty.
all right. So okay, I'm just looking at my notes here. All right. So okay, so that's a simple rhythm. That's like the first rhythm that you want to follow is this. Okay, you can use an analogy here. Mike uses this a lot, like the LA Bridge. Yeah, Mike, just correct me if I'm wrong. You know, so he uses this analogy of the bridge, like of a hanging bridge. You know, like that. So it's like, you know, like this point and this point, like holding up the arm, and it's just like hanging off like a bridge. You know, and then it goes into wrist and like to the fingers, basically, right? So this is like a simple analogy. So here's one rhythm. Okay, here's you can say, oh, the arm is like fully covered in just like one rhythm. Now the second thing is it's called a hyperextended arm, right? And this is again where you're gonna face like a little bit of like different rhythms. Okay, so here's you can see it's an example of hyperextended arm. Now what you have to do with this one, so it's gonna be same, right? You're coming from deltoid right from there. You're going to the back of the arm. Remember always to go from back of the arm, start from there. But now you can say like, it feels like a little bit awkward. It's like, oh, the arm is just like, the force is like pushing here, right? It's not actually allowing it to just flow in just like one single rhythm, but it's like, there's like some sort of force that's like pushing it here, and I should go there, right? So there's like a little force in there. It's almost like a leg, right? It's just like three rhythms in there. So 1, 2, but now you're gonna say, oh, this force is like pointing me to the back of the arm again. Okay, so I'm gonna go here and draw this. Okay, so that's rhythms with the hyperextended arm. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So either it's gonna be just one rhythm for the arm, or it's gonna be three rhythms. Okay, so there's like no other options like available, right? So remember, 1 or 3, just like basically odds. Now with the rhythms are complete, now we can say, okay, like how we can add shapes to it. Okay, so again, it's very simple. Just you should have a balance between both, is like straight and a curve. So where there's a curve, you just need to put a straight in the opposite side right there, a little bit straighter in here, a little bit straighter in here. Okay, right there. Now the thing is, with the hyperextender arm, you're getting this like brachoradialis. Okay, is that's this muscle actually, which is it's a beautiful muscle, right? It flows like that. So if you're, let's say, if you're drawing a simple arm like this, right there, and see, I'm adding the shapes because this is a curve, this is a curve right there. So yeah, nobody's arm looks like that, but that's actually the simplicity of it. Okay, now I'm gonna say, okay, I'm gonna add this brachoradialis muscle on top of this right there, and there it goes. You know, so now after adding that, you're gonna be ending with a lot more like, let's say, organic and more natural looking arm, because now we are not confused by the muscles. Okay, we're not we are just seeing it as an abstract design. Okay, like very good design, and we are adding like bulge of the muscle where it's like necessary. Okay, so you need to think in first of like design terms. Okay, it's like this. That's a simple design that you want to follow, like always. Okay, so that's the shape. Okay, this is a curve, that's a straight, this is a curve, that's a straight. Okay, you can also call it, oh, this is like a completely like just like one straight. Okay, and we're just like sorry, curve. Okay, this is just like one completely one curve, and that's like two other shape straights in there. All right, so look at this shape, look at this shape right there. And with the deltoid as well, you can do another shape in here. Okay, so right there. So that's actually the arm. Now add a bulged muscle to it, which is the brachoradialis, and you end up with a good arm. Okay, right there. So those are the rhythms: one rhythm, three rhythms, the hyperextension basically. Okay. Now looking at the notes again. Now we can add some anatomy. You know, basically just adding anatomy to it. So anatomy book, the force anatomy book is having like a new force, which is called contraction. Okay. So now you can say that when the arm is bent like this, you can say the tricep is actually stretching out. Okay. So you can say, okay, here's the tricep, right? It's stretching out right there, function wise, and the biceps is actually contracting. Okay, so you can say you can actually put like two arrows in here and saying it's like contracting. Okay, so that's actually one of the forces that force anatomy book introduces. Okay, and with the different situation where the arm is just like straighten up, you can say the triceps, right? That's actually contracting, right? That's actually contracting, and the biceps is like stretching up. Okay, so that's one of the things. Uh, so we just take the balloon one, okay, the balloon shape, which is doing this, and I've seen like many instructions. It goes like that. It's just like adding this and this and this, and like adding something like that. Which is pretty bad, because it doesn't allow like force to flow. It's just like completely symmetrical like this. So you never want to follow that. Okay. Now actually adding anatomy on top of it. Now what you're gonna do? I'm just gonna remove this one and say, okay, here's a good example for the balloon anatomy, kind of thing. Now don't do this. Okay. Now don't do that on top of it, and definitely don't do this. Okay, with a forearm. So how to do it, how to fix it. So I'm going to come off, okay, just start with the forces and say, oh, it's coming from here, right from the back. It's going to the back of the arm again, right there. Now here's my rhythms. I'm just going to put more straights to complete the shapes in here, right there. Now see, the brachoradialis is right there. I'm just going to go trace over for you. It's right there, okay? So we also, if you see just like a profile shot of it, you would just get a very clear view of it. It's like that, going over across the arm. It's like rotating and connecting to your thumb basically. And when you just like put your hand like this, which is like your thumb is on the other side, it's like connecting with it, okay, right there. But this is not a profile shot, okay? So it's gonna end up somewhere around here, okay, right there. So it's not actually forming a clear silhouette right now. But you can still like consider that. Okay, don't just ignore that completely right there. And yeah, just adding some like organicness to it. Okay, so something like that. So arm, yeah, as you can see, like we are coming to the organic shape right in there. The tricep, again, it's not balloon right there. Okay, it's not balloon. So tricep is a very dynamic muscle in terms of design as well, because it has a curve and it has a straight, okay, by its tendon. Okay, so the straight is coming from its tendon, and the bulge is coming from the muscle itself. Okay, it looks something like that from the back, right there. Okay, so it has 3 heads, by the way, like that. And see, like that's also asymmetrical right there. Okay, so this is all the tendon, this is all the muscle, right? So the bulge is coming from the muscle and the straight is coming from the tendon. Okay, so you want to follow that design here, right? A straight and the curve right there, and the bicep, right, it's contracting right there, something like that. And see, like we are coming like really close to that that organicness of the hand, even we're just following the abstractions and all the design principles. Right now I'm kind of falling into trap here. It's kind of like a very symmetrical shape here, so I'm trying to like give it a little bit a, let's say, like apex change or something to make it a little bit more asymmetrical, right there. So see, I'm just like doing something like that, right there. All right. So how are we doing at time? Almost done, right?
Just about done. Yep.
Yep. All right. So that's it. So Mike, do you think I missed something or?
No, looks good.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one more thing, just really quick. So when you're drawing forearm from the front view, make sure it also has this asymmetrical design, okay? So let's say this is the rhythm of the arm, okay? You don't want to draw forearm that looks like that again, right? Which is this, you want to draw forearm which looks like this. Again, it looks like that. So This is actually the outside of the arm. Okay, this is the inside of the arm. So you just want to follow this angle, right? Follow this asymmetry, and you're gonna end up with a good design for the arm as well. Okay, anatomically accurate and with a good shape design. Okay, so if I just make it shorter, if I just want to show the hand, like how the hand is looking in this one, right? Make sure the hand looks like that. Okay, so here's so it looks like that. Okay, the hand basically looks like that. All right, so just follow the design, and thanks for, like, I'm thanking myself for doing this video, and Mike, so I can always point my students to this one, when they're struggling with the arm or neck.
Good idea.
All right, let's stop share and
all right, you ready, Mr. Swendling?
Yes, I have the
All right,
power
so
already, I see.
Yes, I did it behind the scenes.
Awesome.
I'm on it today.
All right, so I wanted to talk about the shoulder area. Start with the shoulder mechanics, because this is an area that I see students struggle with so much. And so first of all, just understanding how things work. So I would say the first thing to be aware of is that, I usually talked about arms, and of course the arms really attach to the clavicles. So this is like the pivot point of the arms, so, and they attach to the clavicles at the front and to the shoulder blades at the back. And because of that, the arms can move independently from the rib cage. So let's draw some simple diagrams here. So let's say this is the top of the torso, just like a simple rectangle. And then you have the center line here, the sternum, and you have the arc of the ribs. And here, if you look at the rib cage in top view, you will see a socket for the neck, which you can also see here, like the neck needs an opening where it fits in. Now notice that it's kind of like a rounded triangle, because here the pit of the neck is narrower. So we have this, and so if we think of the rib cage as a box, like remember, this is a rigid bone structure, which means that it cannot bend. So if I tilt the bottom of the rib cage like this, the whole rib cage is going to tilt. It's not going to look like this, for example, because again, rigid bone structure, it cannot bend. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. And the reason I say that is, again, because the shoulders can move independently from the rib cage. So it's possible for your rib cage to be in this position, and you can lift up one shoulder. Again, this is the pivot point. The shoulder can go up, and actually the other shoulder can go slightly down, without the rib cage moving. And then the shoulders will give you this angle, for example. So one arm is higher, the other one is lower. So here would be your arms. And man, I can tell you how many times I see students drawing the rib cage and the shoulder structure, and they make this angle the top of the rib cage, which again, that would mean that the bone of the rib cage would be bending like that, which doesn't happen in reality. So again, be aware of the mechanics of this area, and that the arms can move freely, like you can lift your arms all the way up here, and then the shoulder joints would be here, and you would have your arms going up. And that happens independently from the rib cage. So when you're just drawing the gesture, and that's fine, like the figure could be doing something like this, and maybe you see, okay, I see like this drive in the shoulder, and like this is a very strong angle, and maybe the bottom of the torso is like around here, but as soon as you go in there and start drawing structure, you need to look closely and see if the angle of the shoulders is actually the same as the angle of the rib cage, because sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. You know, it could well be that the upper torso is at this angle. You know, it would have the center line here, and it would be the socket for the neck. You know, it would be like the arc for the ribs, and it could be that one shoulder is really high, and then we like falling down into the other shoulder. You know, so let's say like one arm would be like here, for example, and maybe the other arm is like sticking out here. You know, we would have this strong drive of energy through the torso into the shoulder, like pushing this up, and then driving us down into this this other arm. You know, but again, as soon as you get a structure here, you need to keep in mind, and coming back to the like simple diagram of the box, the angles of the top and bottom are always going to be perpendicular to the center. You know, so if you can find the corners of the rib cage, of the ribs, which often are quite like prominent, you know, and if you can find and connect those corners and you can see the center line, you know that because of this structure here, the angle of the top has to be perpendicular, you know, in perspective to the angle of the bottom. So in this case, the rib cage would be like this if we box it out, you know, and notice again, we have a clear socket for the neck. And again, remember that like shape and form wise, the neck is a tapered cylinder. You know, it's not a flat paper cutout. You know, it has like, if you put your hand around your neck, you can feel the volume, you know, and then the neck goes up and inserts itself all the way here.
Or someone else's neck.
That's also possible. Let me quickly drop the opacity down a little bit to move the video. I think that makes it more visible. Okay, so yeah, the neck comes up and then it like connects to the base of the cranium, you know, so you have the neck volume, you have the cranium here sitting on top, and then you have the face and the jaw, you know. So again, this is an area I see students struggle with a lot, and it's just because they're not thinking about the forms, they're just drawing flat shapes. So for the clavicles themselves, we have a bone right here called the manubrium, you know, where the clavicles connect to. And notice that the clavicles, because of the roundness of the neck, again, the clavicles are like these two bicycle handles, you know, like they wrap around slightly and then they go up, and you can see this bump right here. So this whole shape right here, this is the clavicle. And notice the bump right here where it connects to the shoulder blade is called the acromion process. Same is happening here. It wraps slightly around the neck and then it goes towards the center of the shoulder. You know, so notice that there is like a stair, you know, there's like a step down, and then we go down to the deltoid again. And this isn't that like prominent and for every figure, you know, like if there is more like mass in this area, and this could be like a softer transition, you know, it depends on the individual. Like in this guy, it happens to be very like prominent and obvious, which makes him a good reference for this type of anatomy study. So we have that, and let's look at how that works in 3 dimensions. Now again, we have this like this socket here and the neck cylinder, and notice how the clavicle needs to wrap around that neck volume. Then it goes and connects to the center of the deltoid. Same here, wraps around, it goes here, and we can see like the little bit of the width here, and then we have the trapezius sitting right in that opening. And the shoulder, the deltoid muscle, be aware that it wraps it attaches both to the shoulder blade at the back and to the clavicle at the front, you know, which means that it's like a cylinder, you know. If you look closely at the top, you can see how this is wrapping around like this. You know, it wraps around, and then we can, again, this guy has like very clear defined muscle, so we can see clearly how that deltoid muscle is shaped. You know, again, so notice the roundness at the top like a cylinder. Now here, the cylinder of the arm is coming towards us. And so notice that the overlap is following that, you know, it's wrapping around. You know, so this like the top plane of the cylinder, and then it's coming towards us. You can see it here, and it attaches to the side plane of the arm. You know, so again, very important to keep in mind the volume in this area. You know, and this is more understanding form and structure than anatomy. You know, this is about, because even when students learn the shapes, they often come in and draw flat shapes. You know, same with the neck muscles. You know, if you learn anatomy before you learn how to draw, then you will flatten this out. You will just draw some muscle shapes, but there is no volume or underlying structure to hold it together. Now, so super important. I see I have a couple of minutes left. Let's go quickly to the shoulder blades. Let's see. I want to show the deltoid there. So for the shoulder blades, just like with the clavicles, like be aware that they have some freedom of movement. So the shoulder blades can, like they can slide over the rib cage. Like notice here, and what we see are the edges of the shoulder blades. You know, so notice how close this edge is to the center, and notice that this one is a bit further. That's because his arm is pulling the shoulder blade away from the spine, and here his arm is pushing the shoulder blade towards the spine. You know, so this shoulder blade is closer, and this one is sliding over the rib cage, and it's going a bit farther. You know, so very important again to be aware of that that little functionality. And let's see, add another example here. So this is a good example of like the rotation of the shoulder blade. Again, notice the angle of that inner edge of the shoulder blade. The shoulder blade would be around here, you know, and notice this angle. So the arm is lifted and he's pulling the shoulder blade away from the center. Now, so the shoulder blade is sitting right here. You know, and then you have the deltoid connecting to the front, and again it goes and connects to the clavicle at the front and the shoulder blade at the back. And here the same is happening. The cylinder is coming towards us, so we can see the roundness of that top plane of the cylinder, you know, as the arm is coming towards us in space. Let's see. So here we can see here both arms are lifted. So again, we can see like the rotation of that shoulder blade, you know, relative to the spine. And so this arm is stretched, again, it's pulling the shoulder blade away. And this arm is pulling the shoulder blade somewhat closer to the center. So be aware of that the shoulder blade can rotate when you lift up your arms, and that's when you move your shoulders away and towards your spine, that the shoulder blade will get closer or farther away from that. All right, that was it for me today. I'm going to give it back to Mike. Hopefully this will help you guys to understand the like the shoulder mechanics.
All right. Well, I hope that today has helped you guys understand that. First of all, anatomy comes at the end. There are a lot of great questions around that prior, and it's because you want to learn how to draw before you learn how to draw anatomy, and that's because you want to learn how to draw force, form, and shape before you get to anatomy, right? So yeah, please try not to start with anatomy itself, right? Unless, like you said, you want to become a doctor, which is all good. What else did we talk about today? Straight to curve shape design. We talked about hierarchy, silhouette, and then digging down into smaller and smaller muscles. And that there are tricks, to seeing these things on the human body. We talked about arms today, the legs, and we talked about the whole scapula area and so on, right? So hopefully these tools will help you moving forward. We will see you again next week. Please subscribe to this channel if you like the content that we're putting out. If you're interested in learning more, obviously there's a ton of videos on the YouTube channel, but if you want more organized content, then come visit us at drawingforce.com, where Swenley, Matunjay, and myself can be found teaching. We also have a Discord there, so go check out the Discord. You'll see it at the top of drawingforce.com homepage. I think that's it. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we will see you next Friday. All right. Let's say goodbye to everybody here. Take care, guys.
Yes, see you guys. Bye-bye.
I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.